Well, that was certainly an interesting end to yesterday's race in St. Louis. Thrilling battle for the win. To cap it off, a surprise winner. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Gateway and Worldwide Technology Raceway. The straightaways are long and fast like an NHRA drag strip run. The corners are so tight you got to pack it in there and be very careful on the braking. Yesterday, in the third trip to Gateway for the Cup Series, we had some interesting strategies with track position versus tires. At the end of the day, 3 drivers battling out for the win, 2 fell short, and 1 driver that you didn't expect came out on top. Let's get into all that went down at Gateway. Number 1, Cindric steals the show. Austin Cindric, the third driver from Team Penske, picks up his second career Cup Series win by winning yesterday's Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway in Gateway, beating out Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Tyler Reddick, and Joey Logano for the victory. Who would have thunk it? This is his second Cup win. The last time Austin Cindric won a NASCAR Cup Series race, it was the season opening Daytona 500 in 2022. It was his first full-time year in the Cup Series. He won the Great American Race in a photo finish battle against Bubba Wallace and beating out his teammate Ryan Blaney as well. And also was able to make the playoffs that season. It was a very impressive rookie year for Austin Cindric. Last year was a down year for him, and yesterday he stole the show by taking the lead on the white flag when his teammate Ryan Blaney ran out of gas. Coming to take that white flag, and Cindric brought it home to get his first win of the season, breaking the 85-race winless streak and securing his spot into the playoffs. Now, legitimately, a lot of people think, somebody like Austin Cindric, who hadn't been running well lately, this is probably just a Mickey Mouse win, and he probably just locked himself into it. No, Austin Cindric was very, very strong yesterday, starting on the outside pole alongside Michael McDowell when we dropped the green flag to kick off the race, and hung around the top 10 for a lot of yesterday's race. In general, the Penske cars this weekend were very, very competitive, and Cindric kept that speed up there, had the track position, and just played the strategy outright. At the beginning of the final stage, he, along with his 2 teammates, elected to stay out and keep their track position because they pitted a couple laps towards the end of stage number 2 because of a caution that came out. Cindric was able to get that track position, get himself inside the top 5 at the end of stage 2, and then his crew chief Brian Wilson said, we're rolling the dice and we're going to stay out at the beginning of the final stage because if everybody has green flag pit stops during the race and we don't have a caution, we're sitting pretty to have a chance to win the race. And boy, oh boy, were they in the mix at the very end. They had the lead at the beginning of final stage. Then they were able to come down pit road, make their green flag pit stops, and when everything cycled through with no cautions whatsoever, Cindric was able to stay inside the top 3. But because he pitted a lap early and guys like Ryan Blaney and Christopher Bell vaulted over him, he was stuck in third, back by about 5 to 4 seconds of the leader, and it looked like he was going to settle for a top 3 finish. But then things changed with under 20 laps to go when Christopher Bell, racing Ryan Blaney for the lead up front, had a problem, fell backwards. Cindric passed him, and it looked like it was going to be a nice runner-up finish for Cindric until coming off a turn 4, the white flag, I see Ryan Blaney slowing down. I'm like, something's wrong. And then as they take the white flag, Cindric blows by his teammate and goes on to win the race. And it's a big win for Austin Cindric, not just to lock themselves in the playoffs, but for him in general. As I mentioned, he won the Daytona 500 opener in 2022, made the playoffs, had a good rookie year. Last year was a sophomore slump. They weren't that competitive. They had a couple of nice results, but they weren't strong enough like they were the year prior, and he didn't make the playoffs. This year in particular, well, it's been a struggle for him. He only had 1 top 5 entering yesterday's race, and that was at Atlanta, where he won a stage, and he was very good the entire race, ended up finishing 4th. And ever since then, he had not finished inside the top 10. They did get a stage win at Talladega, but aside from that, they weren't running competitively. Of course, the Penske cars were still trying to find themselves with speed and performance with this new Ford body, but Cindric in general was probably the weakest driver, or now the weakest car at Team Penske. They weren't performing well. The last couple of races, a couple of top 20s, good results, but you want to see a little bit more. This week, they brought their best stuff by far to the season, and brought it to Gateway, and they ran well all day long and were able to pull through at the very end, stealing the win and locking themselves in the playoffs. And Austin Cindric said, it's a big win not just for me, but for the team and for Freightliner, the sponsor, because he said, every time I drive this car, I seem to have a problem. But yesterday, Freightliner sponsorship finally was able to get to victory lane with Cindric. I mean, you can't deny that Freightliner car is so nice. It looks like a Tron Legacy design if you watch the Tron movie. But it was a very, very nice win for Austin Cindric, and now it locks him into the playoffs. And it's pretty much put to bed, at the moment, rumors surrounding his future with Team Penske, even though Penske officials have Penske executives have come out and said Austin Cindric's future with Team Penske was never in doubt at all, but we wanted to see some consistency and him running up towards the front a little bit more. Well, with this win yesterday, we like to see that going forward with him. Now he's locked in the playoffs. Got to build some momentum. Got to get some top 5s and top 10s. Keep building that consistency. And maybe we'll see him further and further up towards the front like we're supposed to see him when he joined the Cup Series in 2022, taking over the 2 when Brad Keselowski left to go to RFK. It's really good to see Austin Cindric get the win. He's one of the nice guys in the sport. And, he's made himself a really good race car driver from his time in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series when he won that championship in 2020. Nearly got in 2021, but it was edged out by Daniel Hemrick on the last lap. Cindric's a nice guy, and I really like him, and I hope he can build momentum going forward, him and the 2 team, because, again, it feels like the 2 has been the weak link at Team Penske the last couple of years with Logano and Blaney winning championships the last 2 seasons. Cindric would like to win a championship, and hopefully they can build more consistency and start running up towards the front and getting top 5s and top 10s now that they got this win. One thing is for certain, his win did throw a curveball into who makes the playoffs because it pushed back a couple of other contenders that are still looking for their first win of the season. But a nice win for Austin Cindric and the 2 team. They're in the playoffs, and I hope that they have more consistent runs going forward. So congrats to Austin and the 2 team on their second win of Austin's career. Number 2, heartbreak for Blaney and Bell. Arguably 2 of the top contenders battling for the win late fall short. Ryan Blaney and Christopher Bell. Just total heartbreak for those guys. Let's start with Christopher Bell first. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, Ryan Blaney was the guy leading the white flag lap, but let's talk about Christopher Bell. Off the win at the Coca-Cola 600, came into this weekend feeling very confident about his race car, a track where he's certainly been strong on these short tracks this year, even though Gateway is a 1.25 mile track. They have the 1.5 mile package, but Christopher Bell was very strong from the get-go. Ran up at the front, took the lead from Michael McDowell with about 5 laps to go in Stage 1 and took the Stage win away from him and then proceeded to win Stage 2. That car out front in clean air was a rocket ship. As I mentioned last week, it was a rocket ship on those restarts and pulling away by about a couple seconds before we got a long run in. On long runs yesterday, it seemed to really benefit Bell's car when he had the clean air and the tri position to go along with it. He was so strong, and it looked like he was going to be on his way to back-to-back wins. Well, he got behind at the beginning of the final stage because he, along with many others, came down pit road and came for tires. And as we saw yesterday, track position really mattered versus tires and, wanting more grip and everything. You really wanted that track position up front because it's kind of a little tough to pass here unless there's some sort of tire fall off, which I do feel like there was yesterday. But Christopher Bell was able to get himself back into the top 5 when they were beginning green flag pit stops. And then he cycled himself, once the pit stops were complete, into second place, and he had 20 lap fresher tires than Ryan Blaney in the closing laps of that race, and they were running hard with each other, side by side, duking it out. It looked like for a moment Bell was going to take the lead, then Blaney was able to get a good run on the top and get by Bell. They were going at it so hard. It looked like it was going to be a thrilling battle for the win, until with 18 laps to go, once Blaney got the run off of 4 and was able to get a little bit of a gap on Bell, Bell's car started slowing down and heard on the radio he had an engine problem, and he started losing power so much that on the straightaways, he was getting killed horsepower-wise. Everybody else just blew by him, and he just kept falling backwards and backwards and backwards like a rock sinking to the bottom of the ocean. It was just so devastating to see the best car yesterday, who led 80 laps, not be able to have a chance to win yesterday's race because of an engine problem. Now, he was getting some assistance from his teammate, Martin Truex Jr., during the last few laps of that race, but as Truex was pushing Bell down the straightaways to give him a little extra speed to prevent those other guys coming from behind, passing him and forcing him to lose a lot of spots. Now, you're not allowed to get assistance on the last lap of the race. It doesn't say during the race that you're allowed to get assistance. You're allowed to, but on the last lap, Truex had to get off that back bumper of Bell. And despite that engine problem, Bell went from competing for the win back to a 7th place finish. A total gut punch for a guy who was so dominant yesterday and had the car to beat. But despite that, to get a top 10 despite the engine problem, it's still good and it still keeps them consistently going well right now with the win last week in the top 10 yesterday despite being the best car. It would have been pretty interesting to see what kind of momentum this team could be building if they had that win yesterday and the engine problem never occurred. But what are you going to do? Bell had an engine problem, yet he still comes away with the top 10. And then we go to Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric's teammate, who it looked like on the last lap was going to get the victory. Now, he in general had a good car yesterday, hovering around the top 10 like pretty much every single driver from Team Penske was yesterday. Blaney had a really good race car. He was up there. And then he got his track position at the beginning of the final stage with his other two teammates when they stayed out. They decided to go for track position versus tires because they felt like no cautions in the final stage would occur. They would keep their track position and probably would be battling for the win. And that was the case. He was able to fall over Austin Cindric during that green flag pit stop cycle. And even though Christopher Bell was charging from behind and they had those battles going on side by side for about 10 to 15 laps, which had me on the edge of my seat. And it was definitely, I think, for the fans that are in attendance, it was worth the price of admission to see those guys battling it out for the win on the straightaways, in the turns. It was so much fun to watch those guys. When Bell had that engine problem, I thought, if we don't get a caution the rest of the race, Blaney's on cruise control the rest of the way home. But as we're coming to the final laps of the race, Austin Cindric was gaining on him, and I'm like, what is going on with the 12th car? And as we come off the turn 4 to the white flag, he slowed down completely, and the radio said he was out of gas. Which puzzles me because I wonder, based on how many laps they were able to stay in how many seconds they remained in the pits when they made their final stop, how much gas did they actually get in that tank? I felt like if the way they stayed in there, that they had enough gas to go the rest of the way, and they wouldn't have to worry about running out of fuel. But I guess that wasn't the case, and it ran out of gas, and instead of possibly winning the race, Ryan Blaney fell from the lead at the white flag to the last car on the lead lap in 24th spot. Another gut punch to a guy who probably should have won yesterday's race. I mean, nothing to take away from Christopher Bell. He had the best car, but Ryan Blaney, our defending champion, has just not been lucky to try to win a race this year. I mean, think about last week. He had a good car early on the 600. Then he had the wheel problem, sent him in the wall, out of the race early on. This race, I thought things were going to turn around from him when he had the lead late. I thought he was going to win that race. But unfortunately, they didn't get enough gas to complete the entire final lap on a full tank. And they're left with winning on the last car on the lead lap. They got to take some positives, though, for the speed that they brought. But we like to see our defending champion get to victory lane at some point. It's going to happen, but we just cannot have this bad luck if you're the 12th team. So, tough luck for two guys, in Blaney and Bell, who had a great chance, either one of them, to win yesterday. Number 3, tangled between the Kyles. At the end of stage number 2 yesterday, which was one of the other dramatic moments of the race, Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch battling side by side inside the top 10, going into turn number 1 in the last lap of stage number 2, tangled, and both of them went around bringing out the caution and taking one of the Kyles out of the race. In general, yesterday, Kyle Busch, he had a really good race car running inside the top 10 and bringing some really good speed for a team that has really had its struggles this year, especially on pit road. But yesterday, they had a good day on pit road. They had good pit stops. They had top 10 speed. Same with Kyle Larson, who, of course, didn't get to run last week because of, running the 600 and weather impacting his double opportunity. And he arrived to Charlotte late. He wasn't able to get to run at all because at that time the weather arrived and we weren't able to get it back going. But Larson and Busch were battling side by side into turn number 1, and they were already making some contact, and then Larson got loose on the inside and went around, and unfortunately Kyle Busch was so close to him that he unfortunately was a victim of that incident as well and went up into the outside wall, and Kyle Busch was unfortunately knocked out of the race with a 35th place finish. Kyle Larson, on the other hand, didn't sustain much damage, just a little bit of a scrape on the back end. He actually was able to continue on and finish inside the top 10 in 10th place because he had a good pace in that car, pitted a couple laps later than a lot of other people, and that's what helped him with those fresh tires gain some of that track position and pass a lot of those guys at the end. And of course, Blaney running out of the gas at the last lap helped Larson get that top 10. So a good job for Kyle Larson, who we're still waiting on a decision from NASCAR if he's going to get a waiver or not. I still think he should. Now, Kyle Busch, on the other hand, for a guy that has definitely been struggling this year, with the Austin Cindric victory, he still finds himself further outside the playoff grid. They've got to get to victory lane, but they've got to start having some consistency. I felt like they had it yesterday. I thought they were going to finish inside the top 10. But what happened in turn one? Now, I don't blame Kyle Larson on that thing. I think it was just a whole racing deal with those guys. They're battling for position. Of course, they're fighting for some stage points. But it's bad luck right now for Kyle Busch and his number 8 team. I mean, they've been trying to get the ship right around for that number 8 car, but unfortunately they just can't seem to pull through and get a good result when they need it the most. I mean, a couple weeks ago they had back-to-back top 10s at Dover and Kansas, and I'm like, things are turning around for him. And then Charlotte last week, he had, pit road problems. He was able to rebound for a top 15, but he would have wanted a little bit more. And yesterday, I thought he was going to be in the top 10 at the very end, but unfortunately, the incident with Larson at the end left him 35th place, and he was not happy with Larson, even though I don't think it was Larson's fault. It was just a racing deal in general. So tough luck for one Kyle, while the other Kyle was able to go on and get a top 10. Number 4, much needed results for Logano, Austin Dillon, and Hocevar. 3 drivers that really needed some good runs yesterday got them at Gateway. Kicking it off with Joey Logano, the inaugural winner at Gateway Motorsports Parker Worldwide Technology Raceway back in 2022, got a top 5 yesterday with a 5th place finish. A guy that has definitely had struggles this year, like some of the other contenders and champions of the sport, like a lot of the Fords who are getting adjusted to this new body. Logano had not been performing up to par as of a lot of this season. Now, a couple weeks ago, of course, he won the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, getting some momentum on his side. Then at Charlotte last week, they kind of struggled. Did end up inside the top 15, but I would have expected a little bit more from Joey Logano in that race. But yesterday, like his other 2 teammates, Logano brought speed, and they were very good yesterday. Pretty much hung inside the top 10 all day. Didn't really lose a lot of their track position. Like his 2 teammates, he stayed out at the end of the final stage to gain that track position and try to get himself a good result. And that paid dividends for Joey Logano. Now, he's still outside the playoff grid right now, but if they can get further up towards the front and start running up front more often, eventually he'll get that win and he'll punch his ticket to the playoffs and join his teammate Austin Cindric and hopefully Ryan Blaney when he gets his. But a much needed top 5 for Joey Logano yesterday. Good job by him in the 22 team. Then we go to Austin Dillon. You talk about somebody that's had bad luck this year. Nobody has had bad luck more than Austin Dillon. They have struggled worse than Kyle Busch this season. They have not been performing well. They're not running up in the top 15 like we saw them doing about 2 to 3 years ago. But yesterday, he actually came away with a good result, finishing in 6th place. Now, granted, a lot of people think, Austin Dillon, the year it's been for him, he got that based on track position. Well, yes, but in general yesterday, Austin Dillon, like his teammate Kyle Busch, had some competitive speed, running in the top 10 to top 15 a lot of yesterday's race, and got that track position we needed to start the final stage, and hung out there for the rest of the race and didn't fall back at all. And it was a big result for him. It was only his 2nd top 10 of the season. The first one this year was at Texas about a month and a half ago. So this was very needed for Austin Dillon and that 3 team to try to get some momentum going, because he said it's been a rough year for him this year. It was a rough year for him last year because of the struggles that he had. They had that points penalty in Martinsville last year, which they never recovered from. This was good to see Austin Dillon having a nice result and running competitively yesterday. Again, stayed up there in the top 10, top 15 all day long. So nice job by the 3 team to finally get some luck on their side with a good run. And then we go to Carson Hocevar, who's just continuing to overachieve this season. I haven't had the chance to talk about him much in my vlogs, but Carson Hocevar in general this year has overachieved expectations. I mean, if you take away the early lap crash in the Daytona 500 this year with Harrison Burton, Hocevar has been finishing races this year, and he's finished 10 out of the 15 races that we've run on the Lelap Inspire Motorsports equipment. This is the track, by the way, where Hocevar made his Cup debut last year, driving the number 7 car for Spire Motorsports, because Corey LaJoie was driving the 9 while Chase Elliott was suspended from the Charlotte incident. Hocevar was having a really good run at this race last year until on the front straightaway he had a brake rotor fail and knocked him into the outside wall, taking him out of the race, and which was tough because that debut race, he was going to probably finish in the top 15, top 20. Then at the end of the year, he was able to get the opportunity to drive for Legacy Motor Club because of Noah Gragson getting suspended indefinitely by NASCAR, and they granted his release because of what happened with him in social media at that time. But Hocevar was able to take that advantage and make a name for himself and put himself up there as a potential candidate to be a Cup driver next year for any team that wanted him. And he did very well for himself. Nearly got a top 10 at Bristol last fall. this year with Spire Motorsports, he's been the best car at Spire Motorsports. They've had top 15s. They've had a lot of top 20s. They got their first top 10 of the season at Texas, coincidentally, where Austin Dillon got his first top 10 of the year. But yesterday, Hocevar qualified in the top 20 and ran in the top 15, top 20 all day yesterday. They benefited, I think, from the caution during the middle of stage number 2 when Josh Berry had a left front tire go down into turn number 3, taking him out and pretty much shuffling up the running order. Hocevar was one of the many cars that pitted towards the end of stage 2 and was able to get some of that track position and stayed out at the beginning of the final stage, and that's what kept him up there and running with a lot of those other cars yesterday. Imagine a Spire car running along the likes of Joe Gibbs Racing, Team Penske, Hendrick Motorsports, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, up inside the top 10, top 15 yesterday and finishing in 8th place. A really good run for Carson Hocevar. Now, points-wise, as far as trying to make the playoffs, he's 21st, which, again, for him, I consider that a successful start to your rookie campaign already, and he's finishing the races as a rookie. Do I think he's going to make the playoffs? No, but you never know what can happen in these upcoming races, especially with Daytona looming around soon at the end of August. That's an opportunity that could prove dividends for someone like Carson Hocevar. But he's definitely making a name for himself in the Cup Series, even though a lot of people have critiqued him for how he drove aggressively in the Truck Series. In the Cup Series this year, in his rookie year, he's had some aggressive moments at times, but he's also been driving really, really smart. And he's also, again, been finishing these races, and I'm very, very proud of this young man. I think he's got a good long-term future with us in the Cup Series. Is it going to be with Spire long-term? Who knows? But if the right opportunity opens up down the road for him, I think he should take advantage of that, and I think he can maybe be something special in our sport. So great results yesterday for 3 drivers in Logano, Dillon, and Hocevar. They really needed those results. And number 5, track position versus tires. Well, the last couple of years, we've seen track position become the main factor in deciding who wins the race at Gateway Motorsports Park, because after a couple laps into a green flag run, after restarts, it gets spread out, and sometimes you don't necessarily have battles unless there's some sort of tire fall off. Well, this year, I do feel like there was some tire fall off for some guys that were taking advantage of track position versus guys that were coming in for tires. But yesterday, track position was, again, the factor that helped the winner of the race get to victory lane yesterday. I mean, when you had that track position yesterday, you were able to stay up there and you almost never lost it. Now, if you had track position at the start of the race and you fell backwards, you almost never recovered from it, especially no matter how hard you tried on those restarts, which are pretty fun to watch at Gateway with them 3 and 4 wide down the straightaways before they get into the corners. I'm surprised at the times that they were 3 and 4 wide yesterday that they didn't wreck. But I thought in general, with the track position and the game of strategy between guys taking tires versus guys wanting to stay up at the front and not lose where they were running at the moment the caution came out, or where they're running in general during the green flag sequence, I thought we had some really good racing at Gateway yesterday. This is probably, in our 3rd trip to this track, the best Gateway race I've seen by far, because not just with the changes in track position yesterday with some guys going forward versus guys going backwards, but the battle for the win at the very end between Blaney and Bell before they both had their faults, the dramatic last lap pass by Austin Cindric, or pass coming to the white flag, was teammate running out of gas, definitely made for a very entertaining race, and I hope the fans there at Gateway, which have been very, very, appreciative of NASCAR being at Gateway long term with the Cup Series now being there, I think they got their money's worth yesterday with that entertaining racing, comers and goers, and of course, the dramatic ending yesterday with under 20 laps to go between the top 3 competing for the win. So definitely a lot of fun, but yesterday, track position was what was able to help some of these guys get the results they needed, and of course, that helped Austin Cindric get to victory lane. So Gateway's become a very interesting track. I hope we keep it long term. Now we're off for some road course racing next weekend at Sonoma Raceway out in wine country in California. A little bit of a twist this time. We're going back to Sonoma, but this track has got a new facelift. It got repaved in the offseason, which that means the time lapse that these guys put on that track going to be a little bit quicker than we've seen in the past, because in the past, it's been an abrasive old road course that has definitely played a factor with who, can manage their tires versus who falls off on their tires and begins free falling through the field. I think track position, again, will be an important factor next weekend to see who comes out and wins. But I'm very interested to see how the new surface next week puts on a show for these fans in attendance. It's going to be a really lot of fun. So which road course racers will shine to the top? Will Chase Elliott be able to get back to victory lane as the road course king? Can Austin Cindric carry momentum from this win and carry it to a road course where he's been very successful in the past? Or will somebody else get a win, like a Daniel Suarez, Martin Truex Jr., who's still looking for his first win of the year? Or could it be Ryan Blaney making up for the one that got away yesterday? Time will tell, but I'm very interested to see what happens when we go to Sonoma next week. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Austin Cindric and the 2 team on their impressive win at Gateway yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!